some people don't believe it ever happened. Yet you meet people on the street that it never happened.
And that's what we're going to talk
I'm
to you
here
about.
to tell you it did happen.
And that's what we want to talk to you about. I'm going to make it as comfortable for you as I possibly can.
Appreciate
At any
it.
point that you want to stop, go back. If I'm not asking you something that you'd like to talk about, I want you to feel free to jump in. It's not that formal. We're just going to talk. We're going to talk a little bit about your family. I know you told me you grew up here. I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Did you enlist or were you drafted?
I drafted.
Okay, I want to talk to you about, now, you Army?
Army.
Army.
I was drafted when I was 19. The first group that's drafted from my hometown of 18, 19-year-old boys.
Well, that's great. I want to talk to you about that. I know you were on the beaches of Normandy. We can talk a little bit about that. I want to hear about, you said Nordhausen, right? Okay, I want to talk about that, what you saw, what you knew, what you had heard. All these things are real critical, and I'd love for you to take it. If you have trouble with dates, times, events, names, we can always talk later. I will be completely available to you by phone. At any point you want to call me and talk some more, offer more information, I want you to feel very comfortable to do that. When I get prepared to write it and put it together, I will call you back and we'll go over what I've written and make sure it's presented exactly how you'd like it to be. Okay, got all that out of the way. Okay, before I leave, I'm going to have you sign a release, which just gives us permission to do this.
Be glad to do it.
Okay, that would be great. So, let's start a little bit about, you said you were from here.
Well, I was born in Overton County, about 100 miles east of Nashville, and grew up to the age of 19, near Dale Hollow.
Right.
Of course, that's a big dam there. But anyway, I was drafted from Clay County, one of the smaller counties in the state, and active duty was April the 15th of 1943, and when active duty I started, I was sworn in the 9th of April, and then was called to active duty the 15th. And Franklin Roosevelt told my mother and dad, said, "Don't worry. All you young boys just being drafted will get 6 months training at home and then get 50 days training at home, visit home."
Now, let me back you up for a second. You said you had 8 siblings? Or you're
8 brothers.
you're
8 brothers.
You have 8 brothers.
3 sisters. But 8 brothers, and there was 7 of us in the service during or after World War II.
Amazing.
That's incredible.
That's incredible. Your mother had 7 sons in the military at war.
That's right.
And every one of you survived.
Survived. I'm the only one that got pretty injured very, very
Right.
heavy.
Now, that leaves a total of 12.
11.
Oh, 11 altogether.
Yeah.
8 of them boys.
Yeah, the
Okay.
girls and boys, yeah.
I understand.
And let's see, I left Clay County the 15th, and Roosevelt says, you go get 50 days home before you go anywhere. Well, that was the 15th day of April.
Year?
15th of April, 43.
43.
And the 20th day of August of 43, I was catching a boat in Newport News in Virginia and had an overnight pass. Went straight to Europe, went to Newfoundland on to Europe, and I didn't get home for 2.5 years.
Wow.
So don't believe everything that people tell you.
That's good advice.
That's a long tour, too.
That's a
man.
long
2.5.
tour. That's a long tour. So you were overseas for 2.5 years?
I was overseas 2 years.
2 years.
I was in the service 2.5. Even when the war ended, I got out. But I was in Europe
That's
2.5
a very
2
long
years.
tour
Yeah.
overseas.
And we didn't know when Saturday from Monday, after that we didn't even know when Sunday came. Because you didn't get a clean shirt every Sunday morning.
Tell
But
me, what
anyway,
did
it was,
when
I
you were
served
going-
I was in 8 countries. Starting in Newfoundland, Canada.
When you were going overseas, did you know anything about what was happening in East Europe?
Well, I followed it some, of course. We knew what we was facing, really.
What did you think you were facing?
Facing Hitler and all of his cohorts. And we knew it was a serious thing.
What did
Yeah.
you know that he was doing? What had you heard?
Everything, yeah. He was very brutal. We knew that, see, even at the young age of 18, 19.
Did you know that he was systematically killing Jews in,
Oh, yes,
in camps?
yes.
You knew that before?
I'd heard all it.
You'd
all
heard?
it, yeah. But that's... I heard stories all along about it. And we'd see pictures of paper occasionally, And we heard about Buchenwald.
You had
After I got over there about the using the human skins, for their lampshades and one thing and another,
You
and
had
I
heard
refused
that.
to go to Buchenwald
You did.
to view it after.
Okay, tell me a little bit about what you were doing overseas. What was your job?
I was in the signal corps working with telephone teletype cable and field wires and all kind of wiring to do with communications. The first
Was communications your MOS the whole time?
yes,
Yes.
the first 75 days we stayed on in Normandy in in France near the beach. We put out, my unit put out 81,000 miles of wires and cables. Then we left Normandy and went to Cherbourg. We freed Cherbourg, and then the Battle of St. Louis, you've heard of that, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. I believe it was 4,300 airplanes came over from England. Airplanes came over one morning and just leveled St. Louis. When we got to St. Louis, there wasn't a roof standing on the building. And that was in the spring of 43. And when we broke through St. Louis, we just headed front into Paris, and then just kept going, and then we ended up in Belgium, just running. We outrun our supplies, our food, everything, mail. For weeks we didn't have anything much because we just outrun them, because Hitler took off and run when we got after him, finally broke through. But those airplanes now, what we did for us to recognize those airplanes overhead at just an instant without even thinking twice. They painted all the bells of those airplanes, and we didn't know this then, white and black stripes, where we could glance up at just a second to see if it enemy planes or friendly planes. So that was very interesting, I think. But when they got through flying over St. Louis, I believe altogether that day or two, that 4,300 aircraft took a part of that action. It was something else. But when we broke through St. Louis, we hemmed up on Normandy for quite a while, We finally broke through, and we just outrun everything. We just the very supplies we had to have is all we got until we went right straight on into Belgium from across through France, because we liberated Paris, and without a shot fired hardly. There were many scars in Paris itself, on the building, everything was good. But we got to Belgium, and everything come to halt because we had to have supplies catch up with us. And we spent part of the winter months in Belgium, in Spa, Belgium, right on the German border, Siegfried Line. You've read of it, I'm sure. Siegfried Line. The line run from Belgium, between Belgium and Germany. And they had pillboxes all over the place, though. But wasn't no battle there. But finally, when we went into Germany, I was go into Germany and then come back out and go in again, And because I was in signal communications, when the troops travel, they got to have communications immediately after they land, after they're there, because without communications.
Do you think your being a specialty, excuse me, let me back up. Do you think that your specialty in communications was part of how you were privy to more information than other people?
I think, I feel like so, yes, because we tried to keep abreast of what was happening as much as we could.
The only reason why I say this is because a few of the liberators we've talked to had no idea. But they weren't in communications. So I'm wondering if the fact that you were in communications had so much access to so much information.
Well, so most of my end of communications was the construction, the laying down of the telephone line. See, we had a machine that would to begin in Normandy, we took a telephone wires. So it came in, 1 mile road, all smooth. And we would take a splice one spool to another one, and later on put them on the figure 8 on their ducks. You remember the Army ducks, And so every time we'd have to stop to splice the wire. It was already spliced. We just hit the beach and keep rolling and feeding it off. So that was one advantage we had. But without communication, you could never win a war because you got to know what's going on. But it was interesting, and of course, I was a kid, didn't didn't fear anything much then. But I have been scared, and you take any person tell you they wasn't scared in the war, I think it might be stretching a little because it's scary times. War is scary. And I told them nobody ever won a war. Everybody loses every war. You know that to yourself.
Tell me
But-
about the events leading up to the camp.
Well, I went in, stayed, spent the biggest part of winter in Belgium. At headquarters in Belgium, we could spread out, see. Go out with, I was with the First Army to begin with. And we'd go out and do our communication work. And then we'd come back into Belgium to the headquarters, go back out, get our orders next day, go in another direction, wherever they needed the communications. And of course, I was in Germany, in Aachen, if you've heard of Aachen, Aix-la-Chapelle. And I was there the night the Belgian Bulls broke through. And that was a spooky time, just the 17th day of December 1943. And we was in an old bummed out German communication building because we would use their equipment every chance we got. And we got word that airplanes coming in, and we were trying to watch a Lulabelle and Scotty film. I can remember back that far. And we'd get upstairs where the projector was, and by the time we get up there, here come the German airplanes, and we go back to the basement. And we didn't know what was happening, see. And it took us all night to watch that film. But it was very interesting. And, but Lulabelle and Scotty, I guess you may remember them. But we watched it off and on. And then we got word that there's some paratroopers landing. See, German paratroopers come, but they dropped them in Aachen and all around us. And we didn't know what was going on. See, that was the beginning of the Belgian Bulge. And it was a terrible thing because you didn't know where you was at, what was you doing. You run into somebody, and you couldn't get it past a guard at the forks of the road unless he would ask you some questions that you had to know, see, like who Betty Grable by or something like that. We had one boy in Florida. Asked who Betty Grable. Well, I don't know who she married. But anyway, that was the way they find out if we were really Americans or German soldiers in American uniform because they was that bad. They had a lot of our uniforms, spoke perfect English. So that's the way the Bull started, and it was a slaughter for a while. And you'd look and get 2 hours sleep in 24 during the beginning of the Bull. It lasted from the 17th of December until just after the Bulls really broke through in a big way. It started snowing. Fog come in. We couldn't use our aircraft. And then it started snowing. And we were just pinned in more or less. And we backtracked a little. I tell you going that way, it's different than me going the other way. So, but we finally, Christmas Day, I believe that year, that the sun broke out through the fog. And the airplanes began to come in on airplanes started bombing. You know, we had men surrounded there for days, you know, completely in the Belgian Bulge. But it was a scary situation, that Bulge thing. And then when we finally broke through, around a little town of Eschweiler, we went on to the Rhine River. And my brother was in the army on the other side from Italy. He came in from the Italian side and landed in southern France. So he, after that, you remember the Ray Morgan Bridge, or Remagen, they call it two different bridges. But the bridge across the Rhine that we captured before they had a chance to blow it up. If you remember, the General Hodges was our chief police after the war here in Nashville, but he was the one that secured the bridge and took it over to keep from blowing it up. And so we took that bridge then, and our engineers floored the bridge. It's a railroad bridge, and we used it one way. Traffic, everything went over, had to come back until they could build a pontoon right alongside it. And so that saved the war for a lot of months off the war by having that pontoon bridge built. And that bridge was named for General Hodges. He was my commander of the First Army at that time. And but the General Hodges Bridge run right along the Ray Morgan Bridge. And if you remember the story behind the old bridge, we was out there day and night trying to repair it. The Germans were trying to knock it out. And my brother came up and stood guard with me on just the end of the bridge, and he said he had never seen much firepower anywhere during the war, and he'd been through South Africa, North Africa, and Italy, and Sicily. But they tried everything they had to knock that bridge out, and finally, we had a bunch of men working on the bridge, repairing it, when it just collapsed on its own. It was because we could just fell. We lost a lot of men on the bridge when it fell in the river. But some things like that I never forget. But we just fortunate thing that we helped that bridge. And kept
Tell me about when you got word to go into Nordhausen.
Well, we got word about Buchenwald first, you know, and then heard of some of the awful camps, and I refused several trips, but we got into Nordhausen, and it was the awfulest thing you've ever seen in your life.
Tell me about that. What was the first thing you remember seeing?
The old sheds where the people, it's a big, huge ball field thing. We're just surrounded with the big buildings, and they were just bummed out and everything. But they were full of straw, all just on the dirt. I mean, thousands of people in them, and they were dead, most of them. They got a few on some of them out alive. And I've got the picture here if you want to see it later. But the terrible stink that could ever been was there, the smell. And I walked all through those warehouses where those people died worse than livestock, with just nothing to sleep on, just a bunch of straw or anything you could find to throw in there. And one of the boys got out alive. One of the prisoners that didn't die told us that they fed them potatoes and soup as long as they could produce anything, working. They got so thin that they started giving them a little soup until they died, and they just died by the thousands. And when I got there, there's over 5,000 that they took the prisoners of war, the German prisoners, and they had to go in and bring those bodies out and lay them out for burial, And they took bulldozers and buried them by the, right there's one place where the bulldozer buried them by the thousands. Here's another one where they just drug them out of those old buildings, no digging. 9% of them was dead. And there's one story right here that you wouldn't believe if you don't see it. But here's what happened. They told us, the few people did get out alive, they told we'll do anything that you want us to do to the officials that was officiating over the camp when you were there, except we can't do no bodily harm, kind of beat them up or shoot them, but we can do anything, make them do anything. They made them get down on their hands and knees and crawl over those bodies from one end to the other. See them standing over there? Crawling all those bodies. Now that's the German officials.
Okay, back up for a second. I want to understand this. The Nazis had said that they would do anything?
No, we told our prisoners, our boys was captured, and most of the people Poland everywhere, we told them that we'll make them do anything you want them to do, as long we can't do no bodily harm. And they made them get on their hands and knees, took those officials, and made them crawl.
Excuse me 1 second. I thought that was off. I'm sorry.
Look to the babies. Now you can see some of the old sheds where they died back in there by the thousands, and it was worse than any livestock or anything anybody's ever treated. And you could just think of the stink. And I got so thin over living with that I had to tie my clothes off. I couldn't swallow anything. The worst thing I ever tried to do in my life in Normandy, there was dead bodies everywhere, both animals and human. And I was sitting on a stump trying to eat something. I tell you what, it's a little can of cheese with bacon, and you can imagine how hard to swallow to start with. Sitting on something trying to eat, and there's some dead German bodies in the road where the tanks just run over them just repeatedly. And you talk about, there's no way you can swallow any food like that. And something else. But
What happened after?
that's just some of the snow and the bell and bulls. After the
You keep. I want to still hear about Nordhausen.
yeah.
You had the German officials had said.
The
Back
German
me up to
officials
that
just
part.
don't. When they were liberated, the boys, most of the Jewish people,
Right.
that uh, when they got out, the few that was living told us about getting potatoes and soup as long as they could work, and then got a little bit of potato water till they died. And he said that we told them then, our army did first time, we'll make them, the officials over the camp, do anything you want them to do.
But we can't kill them.
We can't do nobody harm, beat them up, but we'll make them do anything that you suggest. So they suggested they crawl over those dead people. And I mean, you can see they were had on knees, and you wouldn't believe it if you had been there.
So
But,
you saw them crawling over the dead bodies?
They had to, they had to do it because they were told to do it. And they were our prisoners then, the officials were.
How'd you feel about that?
Terrible. I can't. It's hard to express your feelings to say like that. You live, I guess you finally build a little bit of immunity to it, but you don't get used to seeing people die. And I believe that there's over 5,000 or 7,000 there in that one camp, and they just died in those sheds with just straw and filth and everything. Worse than any animal would live. But it was terrible. But I wouldn't go to any more camps then. But we stayed there quite a while.
How long's quite a while? Do you remember?
Well, no,
I mean,
but I
couple,
just
couple
remember
hours or a day?
a couple of days, I believe. I know it was
Couple
there
of
one
days
day,
you
all
were-
day, one day. I think
How were the Nazis and German officials when you got there?
they were all
Did you have to apprehend them or shoot them or anything
no,
like that?
no, we wouldn't.
They had surrendered
They
when
had
you got
surrendered.
there?
Well, I could cap several thousand myself if I wanted to at the end of the war. They come out of the woods everywhere, but they were very humble.
At some camps, the guards had to be shot down. So you didn't have that.
No,
When you
but,
came in, they
but
surrendered.
sometimes a lot of things happen in war. Some things you don't want to think. And that's for 20 years or 30 years, I wouldn't even think about it. But I get they treating me right now for nightmares that I had over that war.
Yeah.
The VA's got some papers in on this week, but I mean you don't forget some of that stuff. So it's
Do
very.
you remember talking to some of the inmates?
Yeah, that's the ones I tell you where we talked to the few, one or two that got out alive with that, what they would let them eat, But they just.
Do you remember talking? No, I mean talking to them about what was going on, other than the food. Do you remember how were you able to communicate with them?
I don't recall really, because that's been a long time. But
I didn't know if they spoke a little English or there was an interpreter or anything like that.
Yeah,
How were they able to tell you, other than the food, were they able to tell you what was going on and what they'd been through?
no, but not that I recall, because
Okay.
see, my mind was on the dead bodies more than anything else, and you see just nothing but skin and bone on the most of them, and little babies.
Is there anything you remember the most?
I guess the one thing I remember the most, those little, you see the pictures of little babies laying there. It's innocent babies just dying for no reason at all, just because they were there. But Hitler was ruthless, and there ain't no question about it. He was crazy. What I'm thinking about it, I remember one incident in the Bulge, little town called Twapont in Belgium, Twapont, which means, if I'm right, 3 bridges. See, DuPont means 2 bridges. They came from Frantino. A pontoon, see, where we get the word pont from, DuPont. Well, this little town had 3 bridges. They told me during the Belgian Bulge at the height of it, those Germans come all across there during the Bulge now. Like it was dope, just crazy, just shooting everything in the sight. And they killed men, women, children, everything in that little town, just wiped it out. And after the war was, that battle was over, and they had to come in there, they bring German prisoners in there and dig those bodies out of snow and ice and just stack them up on trucks and haul them out just like cordwood. Babies, children, old ladies, it didn't matter. Because they thought then that the German soldier was under some kind of medication or dope or something to act like that, because that was ruthless. It's just terrible. But I recall that very well. I seen them come in at 12 points, Belgium, and haul them out just truckload after truckload.
Do you recall talking to the other soldiers about what you'd seen?
Oh yes, we chatted about that. I've got a friend in Richmond. We talk very often about it. Richmond, Virginia is one of my Army buddies, one of the few that I have left, and we communicate at least once every couple of months.
We have a gentleman that we interviewed who is a liberator, and he said that when he saw the bodies, he found it hard to believe there was a God in heaven. Do you understand that kind of feeling?
Yes, because after all, you know how God let the devil punish Job, don't you?
Right.
Yeah. So, and see, the enemy had just as much power as God would give them. See, Job didn't have any power except God would agree to give him so much power. Same way there, I believe. Mm-hmm. And Hitler, he thought he was going all the way, you know. He thought he was going to conquer the world because he was the greatest ever been. But I tell you what, it's like I say, nobody ever won a war. We all lost. And if you believe we won it, you ask some of these mamas that buried their boys over there. They didn't know it. They didn't win a war. So everybody loses in a war.
You left Buchenwald, or Nordhausen. I'm sorry. You wouldn't go to Buchenwald.
No.
You left Nordhausen. Where'd you go from there?
I went back to my camp in Germany, and then kept on with the signal work until the war ended. And see, I hadn't had any time off at all during World War II, and not even overnight pass, all through the war in Europe. So they flew me down to French Riviera for 8 days.
Wow.
Unsupervised, just took us down and just.
What'd you do?
We just everything we wanted to. They said you're on your own and come to the hotel and eat your meals and just go, because it was R&R, you know. And they wasn't allowed an officer on the whole beach. Nice, you had Nice again, Nice, France, and Monte Carlo over on the hill, and then
Did you do a little
Cons.
gambling in Monte Carlo? Did you do a little gambling?
No, I did. I was happy just to be there.
Yeah.
And Cons, you read the Cons, you know, what
Right.
they do all day. I was there for a day or two. And I stayed in one big hotel there in Nice. And some American came over there and built it in the 20s for $25 million. And you talk about a hotel, it was one more. And we took that whole hotel over during our stay. And it wasn't, like I said, wasn't an officer out on the whole beach over. The enlisted men had it all.
You said, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So we enjoyed it, and we'd go out in the country to the perfume factories in the daytime and on the tour buses. Just after the war and the next week after then. And they serve us meals out on those roads, hotels out in the mountains of southern France. They had the big beans they call them Riviera beans. I don't know if we grow them anywhere somewhere or not, but we served those twice a day, every meal we had. Riviera beans. But some things, just stick with you. And, of course, I've forgotten 95% of what I knew. But it was war is rough. But I'm thankful I got back all right. And
you got back, right? Came back to Tennessee?
I come back to Tennessee, and supposed to have got married and didn't. So I left that part of the country and come to Old Hickory, and I met my wife here after the war.
You said you didn't talk about it for 30 years.
I couldn't even think about it much, and yet I tell you, I still think about it. I wake up, wife, what's wrong? I'll be in a battle with them, I mean, it just comes to you, and you think you're surrounded and no way of getting out, and if you don't get out or wake up, you die. But that's just part of the nightmares you have after war. See, I was in 5 major battles. And
Do you still think about those inmates?
oh yes, they were.
When you think about them, what do you remember the most?
Remember more than any one thing is the terrible physical condition they was in before they died, and the suffering they did for the few months and months before they died on rail cattle cars and being transported everywhere in the world, walked, and just abused beyond imagination almost.
There are people right now who write books and do lectures that it never happened.
That's right. Well, you tell them to call me in, and I'll tell them that if it did, I've lived a big life for 50 years. I believe it did.
When people try to understand, when we educate the high school and college students about what happened, and it's so hard to understand, what do we say? How do we explain it?
See, one generation will wait, just one generation wait to where they won't even remember it anymore. See? And we got to keep them reminding over and over.
Why should we remind them?
So it won't be repeated.
Mm-hmm.
But you just tell them that nobody ever won a war. I'd like to meet the people who said they did. You win battles, but you don't win wars. And it's different when you're going that way than you're going this way too. Because I retreated as much as it advances sometimes. It's different when you retreat. You know, it does something to you. Make you think when you don't know where you're going to be the next hour or who you're facing the next hour. Some bad things happen during World War II, and every war, bad things happen. But I'm thankful that I got back and settled in, and like I say, I can't talk about it now because I guess my years are shorter than they used to be, and I can at least talk about it some. And I'm glad that I lived to tell about it.
Can I ask you a
I'll tell you
question
what.
about the Signal Corps? Can I ask you a question about the Signal Corps?
Yes.
Is the responsibility of the Signal Corps to come in right behind the infantry?
You got in some places you got to go in front of them because you got the communication up there. They got to have it when they get there.
Is that why you were at San
Yeah.
Lo before the
Yeah.
the
So
ball?
we had machines that would machines on a truck that would blow this tiny wire, blow it out of the machine, blow it over in the field. So it just anywhere we could tie the telephone to it. And we tie the telephones to trees, stumps, or anywhere. And that was one of my duties to pay the line out and then make sure and test it back to where I started to make sure it was going all the way back. When the first in Normandy, I've had some pictures of my battalion. I had a whole history book, and a friend of mine came through, one of my old Army buddies, goody boy, wanted to borrow my battalion history, and I loaned it to him, and you know why that was. Never seen him more. He wrote me, and I'm going to get it to you, and I guess the boy's dead. Now, he is from Osceola, Arkansas. I ought to know better, but anyway. But the Signal Corps.
Were you pinned down in San Lo until after the bulge?
Oh, yes, we was on the beach there for quite a while in St. Louis. When we did break through, if we hadn't been with the Air Force, we'd never broke through. But we did, see, the Air Force came over from England. We was just across the channel now. And they just blew the roof off St. Louis, so to speak. And so then there wasn't nothing but just rubble. And then we made a break through to Paris, and of course we got to Paris. Like I say, there wasn't no scars on building nothing. We liberated without any battle at all. And then we went straight on through into across France and into Belgium. And then of course we had to stop at Belgium because we were right on the German border then on Siegfried Line. And that line didn't mean as much as they thought it was.
The Nazis crawling over the bodies.
But
No, I just think that's an extraordinary picture.
now my
I've
company,
never seen that before.
my company clerk, you know, you have every company has a clerk, and he did those photographs for me.
Never seen that photo
Boy.
before.
Boy named Rackstein,
Say that again. Oh, the name of the clerk?
the clerk Rackstein. His father owned a funeral home in Chicago. You know, he's Jewish too, so he really upset over it. But
Do you think that your experience over there changed the way that you view people when you came back?
I guess it did.
not being a lot of Jewish folks in Old Hickory,
No.
do you think that it changed the way you looked at minorities and people that were different?
It possibly did, but I've tried to be fair all the time because I could have very well been a minority. Sometimes I feel like I am, but I'll tell you what.
How do you cope with the memories?
Sometimes it's just unbearable almost. You can't live with it all. And like I say, it comes through me all through the night sleeping. And some nights I don't go to sleep till 2 o'clock in the morning, and I have to get away from it. And they treat me right now with Paxil, if you're familiar with that drug, to kind of, and then Remeron, to kind of keep it down.
Do you think it's gotten worse as you've gotten older?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
but Remeron, it just rattled me. I couldn't use it. So now I saw my doctor the day before yesterday, and I'm on Paxil now. And it seems to be doing a pretty good job. But still, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm probably up walking the floor, or my wife said I yell out. Cause when you get to a place where there's no outlet, you got to make a noise or something, or you're gonna get choked. And just like you tell me about falling off a building, if you didn't wake up before you hit the ground, you would die. And that's the way I feel about these nightmares sometimes. But they're more frequent than they used to be, and I guess it will be as I grow older.
Is there anything you'd like to add that we haven't talked about?
Well, I don't know. I could talk for 4 days.
And you have my phone number, so I can listen for 4 days.